The air in the grand chamber of the consortium was a relic, thick with the silent dust of consensus and the cold pressure of unspoken fear. It was a vast, circular space, carved from the heart of a gravity-neutralized asteroid, its walls a seamless obsidian that drank the light from the floating lumen spheres and gave back nothing but a deep, liquid blackness. At the center, upon a dais of polished cryocrystal, sat High Chancellor Valerius of the Lumen, his elongated form a study in placid contemplation. His skin, a pale, pearlescent membrane, shifted with faint inner light, betraying the calm currents of his thoughts. Around him, arrayed in descending tiers, were the emissaries of the core worlds, beings of stone, of energy, of flesh and chitin, each a monument to their species' evolutionary journey. But today, the ancient protocols of decorum were strained, pulled taut by a silence from a sector of the galaxy they had long considered a triviality. Warlord Grackhull of the Cathar, a being of corded muscle and igneous plating, broke the stillness. His voice was the grinding of tectonic plates, a sound that had shattered wills and heralded invasions across 1,000 systems. The silence from the Sol sector is no longer a curiosity, High Chancellor. It is an indictment of our complacency. For generations, we have allowed this experiment to fester in isolation. We look for a signal, a transmission, a plea for more knowledge. And we receive only the void's own indifference. He gestured with a four-jointed hand, its claws retracted but the threat of them imminent. They were primitives, apex predators on a single world, barely capable of splitting the atom when we first observed them. We bestowed upon them the gift of ruin, a gesture of tutelage. A shattered leviathan from the Ghost War, a relic so far beyond their comprehension that its study was meant to occupy them for millennia, to gently guide their technological ascent along a path we had already mapped. The glipped emissary, Scriv, a crystalline entity whose thoughts manifested as soft, chiseled runes that floated around its head before being translated into a synthesized monotone, chimed in. The data remains unchanged, Warlord. All probes sent to the edge of their star system have ceased transmission upon crossing a predetermined perimeter. No energy signature is detected. No debris. They simply cease to exist to us. The veil is perfect, absolute. We have no record of any civilization achieving such a complete information blockade without detectable energy expenditure. It is a technological paradox. Valerius shifted his gaze, the light within him pulsing a soft, inquiring blue. And this is what troubles you, Grackhull, not their silence but the perfection of it. You, who have always preached that strength is the only metric of a species' worth, are disquieted by a lack of communication. His voice was not a sound but a resonant harmony that vibrated in the air, a chord that calmed or unsettled depending on its pitch. Do not mistake my concern for fear, Grackhull growled, the stone of his throne groaning under his weight. It is an assessment of a threat matrix. We gave them the wreckage of a warship that could sterilize a continent. We expected them to spend centuries deciphering a single power conduit. We expected them to build crude, inefficient imitations, to wage their tribal wars with slightly more energetic weapons. Instead, they have built a wall of absolute silence. They have taken our gift, a symbol of a forgotten conflict and overwhelming power, and they have vanished behind it. Primitives do not learn so quickly. They do not work in unison without external pressure. Something has changed within them. They are not following the path. Their silence is not the quiet of diligent students. It is the focused, patient silence of a predator in hiding. The chamber fell quiet again, the warlord's words echoing in the vastness. He was right, and every being present felt the truth of it in their own way. The gift of ruin had not been an act of pure benevolence. It was a form of control, a gilded cage. By providing a technological template, the consortium intended to ensure humanity's development would mirror their own, making them predictable, understandable, and ultimately governable. To give a child a complex puzzle is to ensure you know what it is thinking about. But the humans had not just worked on the puzzle. They had, it seemed, left the room entirely and locked the door from the inside. Scriv's runic language swirled faster. Analysis of the wreckage provided to the humans indicated that less than a fraction of 1% of the primary systems were salvageable. The quantum-entangled comms array, the temporal drive core, the structural integrity fields, all were shattered beyond any conceivable repair. We gave them a corpse, a fossil. The energy signatures alone from a successful reverse engineering of even its most basic systems, woo. LD have been detectable from halfway across the galactic arm, yet there is nothing, a void where a star system should be. Valerius closed his eyes, his inner light dimming to a thoughtful violet. We forget the nature of the species, humanity, They are a creature of paradoxes. They possess a capacity for savagery that rivals the Cathar, yet they also create art of sublime, fragile beauty. They are ephemeral, there lives a fleeting spark, yet they build legacies intended to stand for eons. They are intensely individualistic, yet capable of terrifying, synchronized collective action when faced with an existential threat. We looked at them and saw their flaws, their divisions, their primitive technology. We did not, perhaps, look closely enough at their spirit. We saw them as clay to be molded. We never considered that they might be the fire that hardens the clay into something new. Philosophy is a luxury we can no longer afford, Gracchol countered, his form leaning forward, casting a severe shadow across the dais. While you contemplate their spirit, I contemplate their capability. That wreckage contained the memory of technologies that brought an entire quadrant to its knees. Even a fragment, a whisper of that power in the hands of a species we do not understand, is a clear and present danger. I propose we act. A fleet must be dispatched. We will pierce this veil of silence, by force if necessary. We will demand an accounting of what they have done with our gift. A murmur went through the chamber. The Cathar solution was always a fleet. It was predictable, but in this case it felt clumsy. To send an armada against a silent enigma was to risk waking something that might be better left asleep. Valerius opened his eyes, his light now a steady, unwavering gold. And what if their silence is not a wall, but a cocoon? What if, in our arrogance, we have provided the catalyst for a metamorphosis we cannot predict? To strike at them now, Gracchol, would be to act from a place of ignorance and fear. That is not the way of the consortium. We are an alliance of reason, not a pack of startled beasts. Reason did not win the ghost war, Gracchol rumbled. Power did, and the ghost of that power is what we handed to those primates. I will not stand by while they reanimated in the dark. Before the High Chancellor could respond, a new sound entered the chamber. It was a soft, almost subliminal chime, the alert from the deep-range sensorium network. Scriv, the glipped emissary, went utterly still, its floating runes freezing in midair before resolving into a single, complex sigil of alarm. Every eye, every sensory organ in the room turned to the crystalline being. "Report," Valerius commanded, his harmonious voice now sharp, cutting through the tension. Scriv's synthesized monotone was flat, devoid of the panic that the sigil implied, which made it all the more chilling. "There is a displacement, on the very edge of the Sol system's proscribed zone, not a vessel emerging from hyperspace, not a wormhole transit. It is a cessation of void. A patch of space has just stopped behaving like space. Gravimetric and light spectrum analyses are inconclusive. The void itself is being occluded." Gracchol rose to his full, intimidating height. "A ship, a weapon." "Neither," Scriv stated, its runes beginning to drift again, slow and uncertain. "It registers as an absence, a hole in reality. It is massive, larger than any Leviathan-class vessel on record. And it is moving, slowly, deliberately out of their system and into consortium territory. It emits no light, no energy, no radiation. It is a perfect black, a shadow moving against the tapestry of spacetime itself." The chamber, once a bastion of galactic power and unshakable confidence, was now filled with something it had not known for millennia, the cold, primal dread of the unknown. The humans were no longer silent. They were coming, and they were bringing the dark with them. The consortium fleet hung in the void like a collection of jeweled daggers, their hulls shimmering with contained energy, their weapon ports glowing with dormant fury. It was a reconnaissance force in name only. Its collective firepower could crack a moon and boil away its atmosphere in a single, coordinated volley. At its heart was the indomitable will, Warlord Grachol's personal command ship, a vessel whose very presence was a statement of Cathar supremacy. On the bridge, Gracchol stood before a panoramic obsidian screen that showed not a view of the stars, but a multi-layered tactical display of sensor readings. He was surrounded by his most trusted commanders, their armored forms rigid with anticipation. They had come to the edge of the humans' territory to meet the anomaly, the shadow that had so unnerved the strategists and philosophers of the consortium. For days it had moved with a languid, unnerving grace. It did not use any known form of propulsion. It did not bend space. It seemed to persuade it to get out of its way. It was a shape carved from nothingness, a silhouette of absolute black against the gentle starglow of the nebula behind it. It was so dark that it seemed to pull the light from the surrounding space into itself, a void given form and purpose. Now it had come to a complete stop, a respectful distance from the assembled armada, waiting. "All sensors, full spectrum analysis," Gracchol commanded, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the bridge plating. I want to know what it's made of. I want to know its power source. I want to know what it's hiding. The reports came back in a cascade of negatives, a litany of failures from the most sophisticated technology the consortium possessed. No energy readings, Warlord. It is thermally inert at absolute zero. Gravimetric sensors show a mass consistent with its size, but it is not warping spacetime as an object of that density should. It is placid. Active scans are being absorbed. No reflection, no echo. It is like scanning a hole in the universe. No life signs. No communication signals. Nothing. One of the bridge officers, a younger Cathar named Vorlag, stared at the display, his mandibles twitching. It is impossible. An object of that size cannot be at absolute zero without a catastrophic power failure. It cannot be silent across all spectra. It is a technological contradiction. It is a threat, Grackhall corrected him, his gaze fixed on the silent shape. It is an answer to our question. They have not been idle. He remembered the wreckage they had given the humans. A leviathan, yes, but a broken one. Its hull was a twisted lattice of exotic alloys and crystalline armor, shattered and scarred. This new thing, it was smooth, seamless. There were no visible weapon emplacements, no sensor arrays, no engine ports. It was a monolithic sculpture of negation, an artifact of the end of things. They have to be using the wreckage, Vorlag mused, more to himself than to his warlord. They must have salvaged the hull materials, but to reforge it into this, it would require energy forges that could melt stars. We would have seen that. Perhaps they did not reforge it, Grackhall said, a sliver of something akin to awe piercing his militant certainty. Perhaps they healed it. The thought was absurd, unscientific, but the object before them defied science. It felt less like a machine and more like a scar on the fabric of reality that had been given motive force. He made a decision. Open a channel. Standard consortium greeting protocol, all frequencies. Let us see if this shadow has a voice. The transmission was sent, a wave of ordered information that washed over the black vessel. For a long moment, there was only the same profound silence. The tension on the bridge of the Indomitable will stretched thin, the air crackling with the hum of weapon systems on standby. Grackhall felt the primal warrior instinct within him screaming to fire, to strike at the unknown and see if it would bleed energy or debris. But the politician, the warlord who had to answer to the council, held him in check. Then a signal came back. It was not a broad transmission, but a tightly focused, single beam of communication, directed with impossible precision at the bridge of Grackhall's flagship. It did not use any of the consortium's encryption protocols, yet it was layered in a way that made it completely uninterceptable by any other ship in the fleet. The message was audio, a voice. It was calm, measured, and carried no accent or inflection that any of the consortium's linguistic databases could identify. It was a female voice, speaking flawless, modern Cathar. This is Ambassador Eva Rostova of the Human Solitary. We acknowledge your greeting, Warlord Grackhall of the Cathar. We are pleased to finally make your acquaintance. The sheer, unadulterated calm of the voice was more jarring than any threat could have been. Grackhall's officers exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the trembling uncertainty of a primitive species meeting their gods. This was the placid confidence of an equal. Grackhall motioned to his communications officer. Put her on the main screen, audio only for now. He stepped forward, his massive form filling the command dais. Ambassador Rostova, you have been silent for a very long time. Your silence has caused a great deal of concern within the consortium. Our silence was necessary, the voice replied, its serenity unwavering. We had much to learn. You gave us a great gift, Warlord, a gift and a terrible burden. We needed time to understand its full implications. You have built a vessel, Grackhall stated, his voice a hammer striking an anvil. We see it before us, a ship of immense size constructed from the remains of the Leviathan we provided. We demand to know its purpose. Is it a weapon? There was a pause so brief as to be almost imperceptible, yet it felt charged with meaning. No, Warlord, it is not a we. Pawn, we do not build weapons of this scale. It is against our nature. Grackhall let out a short, harsh bark of a laugh. Against your nature? We have studied your history. It is a litany of conflict. You perfected the art of killing one another with sharpened rocks and fission bombs. Do not speak to me of your peaceful nature. You have studied our past, Ambassador Rostova corrected him gently. You have not seen what we have become. The wreckage you gave us, it taught us more than just engineering. It taught us humility. It taught us perspective. We looked upon the ruin of a ship that could shatter worlds, and we did not see a tool to be copied. We saw a tragedy to be understood. The human's words were a philosophical puzzle, and the Cathar had little patience for puzzles. Answer the question, Ambassador. What is its purpose? Why does it hide itself from our sensors? Why is it here? Grachol's voice was rising, the veneer of diplomacy cracking. Its purpose is complex, Rostova said, but I can offer you a demonstration of one of its primary functions, if you would be so kind as to order your fleet to target us. A low-power targeting lock will suffice. We do not wish for any accidents. The request was so outlandish, so contrary to every rule of engagement and survival, that the bridge of the indomitable will was struck silent. Gracchol stared at the black shape on his screen. It was a bluff. It had to be, a desperate gambit from a species that knew it was outmatched. You are asking me to aim my weapons at your vessel, he clarified, his tone laced with incredulity. We are, the voice confirmed, still impossibly serene. It is the only way for you to understand what we have built, and more importantly, why we have built it. Gracchol narrowed his multiple eyes. He would call their bluff. Vorlag, order the fleet, target the anomaly, a single, focused targeting beam from every ship, low power but maintain weapon charge, on my command. A wave of acknowledgments rippled through the fleet. Thousands of targeting arrays, each capable of painting a target for city-destroying ordnance, swiveled and focused on the black monolith. On the tactical display, countless lines of coherent light converged on the human vessel, a net of pure energy that should have lit it up like a newborn star on every sensor. But it did not. The targeting beams simply vanished. They struck the edge of the vessel's silhouette and disappeared without a flare, without reflection, without any detectable energy dissipation. It was as if they were pouring light into a bottomless well. The targeting computers whined in protest, unable to confirm a lock, their logic circuits caught in a feedback loop of sending a signal and receiving absolutely nothing in return. Report, Gracchol roared. Warlord, Vorlag stammered, his usual composure shattered. The beams are gone. They are not being deflected. They are not being absorbed and re-radiated. They are simply ceasing to exist at the point of contact. The ship is erasing them. On the main screen, a visual representation finally appeared. The human ship was not black because it was painted black. It was black because a field of some kind surrounded it, a field that bent spacetime in on itself. Light, energy, radiation, anything that touched it was not blocked but shunted into a pocket dimension, a null space from which it could not return. It was not a shield that withstood force. It was a shield that removed the concept of force from the equation. A collective gasp went through the bridge. This was not technology. This was something bordering on metaphysics. It was a perfect, absolute defense. Nothing could touch it. Nothing could harm it. The calm voice of Ambassador Rostova returned, now imbued with a profound, sorrowful weight. As you can see, Warlord, it is not a weapon. We have no need for weapons. It is a sanctuary, a shield against a war you have long forgotten and a darkness you do not yet know is coming. We call it the Revenant, for it is the ghost of your past, returned to warn you of your future. You gave us wreckage, a memory of a great failure. We did not build a weapon to repeat that failure. We built an answer. We built a hope. Back in the grand chamber of the consortium, the data from Grachol's fleet streamed onto the main holographic display. The silence that followed was heavier than any before it. The image of the black ship, the Revenant, hung in the center of the room, an object of impossible physics and terrifying implication. The Cathar warlord's report, delivered in a clipped, humbled tone, did little to soothe the disquiet. The humans had not built a bigger sword. They had rendered all swords meaningless. High Chancellor Valerius floated above his dais, his inner light a turbulent storm of violet and silver. The Lumen philosophy was based on the understanding of cosmic cycles, of light and shadow, creation and destruction. But this was an unforeseen. And variable. The humans, in their short, violent lifespan, had leaped from primitive theories to a practical application of reality manipulation that the consortium's most brilliant minds had only ever considered in abstract equations. They have created a perfect defense, Scrib's synthesized voice stated, the runes around its head forming patterns of complex looping analysis. The energy required to sustain such a null-space field, even a localized one, would be astronomical. It defies known conservation laws, unless the wreckage contained more than just damaged hardware. Grachol's hologram, transmitted from the bridge of his flagship, shimmered with barely contained frustration. They speak in riddles, High Chancellor, a shield against a forgotten war. A darkness you do not know is coming. It is posturing, a tactic to intimidate us. Is it, Warlord? Valerius's voice was a soft, resonant chord of doubt. Did you feel intimidated or did you feel insignificant? There is a difference. Intimidation is a tool of power. What they displayed was something else. It was a statement of fact. They have placed themselves beyond our ability to harm. The question we must now ask is not what they can do to us, but why they have chosen not to. The debate raged for cycles. Some emissaries, a faction led by a species of silicon-based life forms, argued for a quarantine of the entire galactic sector. Isolate humanity, treat them as a contagion of unpredictable ideas. Others, like Grackle, still argued for overwhelming force, believing that even a perfect shield must have a flaw, a weakness that could be exploited. But the majority were paralyzed by awe and a creeping dread. The universe, which they had so meticulously mapped and controlled, suddenly felt vast and unknown again. Finally, Valerius raised a slender hand and the chamber fell silent. The human ambassador, Eva Rostova, has offered to address the consortium directly. She has not made demands. She has not issued threats. She has made an invitation. To continue to debate in the dark when a source of light is offered is the height of folly. I will accept her invitation. We will hear what this revenant has to say. The decision was met with a tense, reluctant consensus. The protocols were enacted. Secure, quantum-entangled communicators were calibrated. The grand chamber of the consortium prepared to receive a ghost from its own past, channeled through the voice of a species they had so grievously underestimated. A pillar of soft, white light formed in the center of the chamber, coalescing into the holographic image of a human female. She was unassuming in appearance, dressed in a simple, dark uniform devoid of rank or ornamentation. Her features were composed, her eyes carrying a depth and stillness that seemed ancient, a stark contrast to the known brevity of a human lifespan. This was Ambassador Eva Rostova. She offered a slight, formal inclination of her head, a gesture of respect that was both disarming and deeply unsettling in its confidence. High Chancellor Valerius, esteemed members of the consortium, she began, her voice the same serene, uninflected tone that had so unnerved Grackle. I thank you for this opportunity to speak. I understand your confusion and your fear. We have been a mystery to you, and our reemergence has been abrupt. I am here to provide the clarity you seek. Valerius's light pulsed gently. Ambassador, you speak of clarity, yet your actions are shrouded in paradox. You have constructed a vessel that is, for all intents and purposes, invincible. Yet you claim it is not a weapon. You speak of a forgotten war. The Ghost War was not forgotten. It was a foundational event of this consortium. It was a brutal but conventional conflict against the Xylos' hegemony, a war we won. A flicker of something, not quite sadness, but a profound weariness passed through Rostova's eyes. You won a war against the Xylos, yes, but that was not the Ghost War. That was merely the final, desperate spasm of a civilization that had already lost the true battle. The Leviathan you gave us, it was not a Xylos ship. Its design, its energy signatures, its material composition, they matched nothing in your records of the hegemony. Scriv's runes began to whirl. The statement is accurate. The wreckage's origin has always been an anomaly. It was classified as an advanced Xylos prototype, an assumption based on the context of its discovery. It was an incorrect assumption, Rostova continued, her gaze sweeping across the assembled aliens. When we began our work on the wreckage, we were like children dismantling a sacred relic. We were overwhelmed, but we did not just analyze the technology. We analyzed the damage. The scoring on the hull was not from any energy, weapon, or kinetic impact in your arsenals. The metal was not melted or breached. It was abraded, erased at a molecular level. And deep within the mangled core of its primary memory banks, buried under layers of catastrophic data corruption, we found a fragment, a single heavily damaged log entry, the final testament of the ship's commander. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into the chamber. The log was not a record of battle, it was a lament. It described an enemy that had no ships, no armies, no leaders, an enemy it called the static. It described a creeping phenomenon, a wave of informational decay, a force that moved through the void and unraveled complexity. It did not destroy matter, it reduced it to its simplest, most inert state. It silenced signals, it cooled stars, it unwrote civilizations. A cold stillness gripped the grand chamber. Valerius felt a tremor in the very core of his being. The Lumen philosophy spoke of the great silence, the ultimate heat death of the universe, but as a distant, theoretical end. The human was describing it as an active, approaching threat. The Xylos' hegemony did not attack the consortium out of greed or ambition, Rostova explained, her voice now a somber eulogy. They were fleeing. They were running from the static, which had consumed their home galaxy over millions of years. Their war against you was a desperate, horrific attempt to conquer a new home, to outrun the end of all things. The Leviathan was not a Xylos ship. It belonged to a far older, far more advanced civilization that had tried to stand against the static. They built a fleet of these sanctuary vessels, ships designed not to fight, but to withstand the unraveling, to create pockets of stable reality. The wreckage you found was the last of them. It had failed. It was not destroyed by the Xylos. It was the last thing to be consumed by the static before it fell silent in this galactic quadrant. Its advance temporarily halted for reasons we do not yet understand. Grakul's hologram clenched its fists. This is a fantasy, a story concocted to justify your own power. Is it? Rostova's eyes found the warlords. Look to the intergalactic void, to the vast, empty spaces between the great galactic clusters. Your astronomers call them voids because they are empty of matter. But they are not. They are full of the dust of dead galaxies, civilizations erased so completely that not even the light of their history remains. We cross-reference the Leviathan's final sensor readings with your own deep-range cosmological surveys. The data is there, buried in the background noise you have always dismissed as instrumentation error. There is a pattern, a wavefront. It is faint, ancient, and unbelievably far away. But it is approaching. It is the reason for the great silence. Life is not rare in the universe. It is simply temporary. It is a fleeting warmth and complexity in a cosmos that is inexorably trending towards cold, simple stillness. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying precision. The perfect silence the humans had created around their system was not a wall to keep the consortium out. It was a laboratory. The null-space field of the Revenant was not a shield against weapons. It was a shield against reality decay. They hadn't just repaired the Leviathan's technology. They had understood the existential horror that created it and had perfected it. You gave us wreckage, Rostova said, her voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper. You thought you were giving us a tool of war, but you were giving us a warning. You gave us the ghost of a civilization that died fighting a battle you never knew existed. We took that ghost, that memory of failure, and we forged it into a promise. The Revenant is not a human ship, not truly. It is the legacy of all who have fallen to the static, returned from the shadow of extinction. It is the first of many. It is an arc. It is an iron shadow against the coming twilight, and it is the only chance any of us have to survive. The truth, when it finally settled, was more vast and more terrifying than any war the consortium had ever fought. Their millennia of politics, their empires, their fleets, they were all just intricate sandcastles built on a shore, with a tidal wave of cosmic oblivion rolling in from an impossibly distant sea. The humans, the primitives they had sought to control, were the only ones who had seen the water rising. High Chancellor Valerius looked at the calm, determined face of the human ambassador. He saw no arrogance, no triumph. He saw only a shared, terrible burden. He saw a species that had looked into the ultimate abyss and, instead of flinching, had begun the slow, patient, impossible work of building a shield to hold it back. "What do you ask of us, Ambassador Rostova?" Valerius asked, his voice a humble, harmonious chord. "Nothing," she replied, and the simplicity of the answer was the most profound statement of all. "We do not ask. We offer partnership. We offer knowledge. We offer a future. The static is patient. It will be millennia before it reaches this galaxy, but the work of survival muse. Begin now. We have built the first sanctuary, but one is not enough. We will need a fleet of them. We will need new sciences, new technologies, new philosophies. We will need all of us, together." A new era for the galaxy began not with a bang, not with a treaty signed in ink or energy, but with a long, shared silence in the Grand Chamber. It was a silence no longer born of fear of one another, but of a common, soul-shaking awe. The fear of humanity was gone, replaced by a humbling respect. The arrogance of the consortium was shattered, replaced by the dawning realization of their own fragility. The Revenant, the unstoppable iron shadow, was not an ending. It was a beginning. It was humanity's true gift to the galaxy, not a weapon forged from the wreckage of the past, but a shield for the future, a future they now had to build together, standing shoulder to shoulder against the encroaching silence of the eternal night. The prodigal children had returned, not to conquer their parents, but to save them from the collapsing sky. And in the face of that ultimate cosmic threat, all other conflicts, all other histories, seemed as small and insignificant as dust motes dancing in a single, fading beam of light.